My name's Levi Gregory. I've been mining in San Diego, mostly the Paula district, for over 10 years. A couple years ago, my wife and I decided to purchase this old historic mining property and kind of take the skills and everything I've learned from all the legends in Paula and see if I can apply it to this property here. The history of the Little Three, like most of San Diego, started around 1903. Actually, the original discovery story is a little better than that. There's a big cattle ranch, actually the Ferguson Ranch, and one day a cattle got loose out of their property, crossed the Hatfield Creek, and went running up in the bushes there. And they had to chase this cattle down. And when they did cross the creek, they found these giant green crystals just laying all over the ground. And the ranchers brought it to Rob of Escondido. He was a geologist. He identified it as tourmaline, and then he enlisted his two partners, and they purchased the property from the ranch owner. And that's how the mine was originally discovered. Now, they had it for quite a while, and most of their work predominantly in this early era was on what I refer to as the Topaz Ledge. It's also referred to as the Little Three Main Dike. I'll show a map of that later. But basically, that was the main dike relatively close to the creek, and it produced some of the most spectacular, famous specimens. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of photo or video evidence of this material. At this time, specimen collecting wasn't a huge thing in San Diego, unfortunately. But a couple specimens did actually make it down to the City Hall in San Diego, where they were on display for many years until World War I happened. And then the Navy took over and basically packed everything up, and those specimens were never seen again. One of them was described as a roughly 5-pound topaz on a 100-pound matrix of tourmaline, lepidolite, clevelandite, and that one hasn't been seen. However, one did make a resurgence in the last 10 years where it was a quartz crystal about this tall with, tourmalines almost this size attached to it, which was supposedly part of that original discovery and was actually drawn by Frederick Coons. Bill Larson actually uncovered it. One of his friends found it in some buddy's shed that's been there forever, and they brought it back to life and re-identified it as Little Three and attached it to that original find. So that was a really cool piece of history that made a comeback. After the 1912 Chinese tourmaline market collapsed, a lot of mining in San Diego stopped. And then with World War I coming up, there just wasn't a lot of able-bodied men available to mine. So that was kind of the end of that first original era. And I do believe that that original era on that Topaz Ledge did produce some of the most spectacular pieces that would have rivaled anything out of Paula. Unfortunate that there wasn't a big specimen collecting mentality then, and then the ones that were collected disappeared. So we have a huge gap from there until 1951 when Lewis Spalding purchased the property for $2,000. Yeah, these are topaz and spessartine are pretty much the two predominant gems of the area. So this is a really cool map. This is the property outlined in white. All the white lines are veins of pegmatites on the property. So it's pretty swarmed. The whole valley is kind of like this. However, the two things that really make this stand out are the red blob on the top there and the blue one in the middle. And they're kind of both in a pink line there. That blue one is the Topaz Ledge. That one I refer to as the main dike or the Topaz Ledge. And then the top one would be the Spessartine Ledge. And those are the two predominant dikes. They've been both producing since the very beginning. However, the Topaz Ledge, after that very first push, and after Spalding Sr. purchased the property and did his work, even Spalding Jr., who took over in 1973, really had a hard time finding anything left on that Topaz Ledge. It was really heavily worked. The surface exposure was phenomenal, but the veins in the chemistry I have found change really dramatically up here, like a switch. So he would work, Spalding Jr. worked predominantly on that upper Spessartine Ledge, and that Spessartine Ledge is amazing. It's really unique for San Diego. There's only a couple mines like it. I'd say the Mesa Grande area is similar in that it can produce pockets every 3 to 4 feet pretty consistently. I don't think I've ever gone more than 4 feet and not found a pocket consecutively in that vein. The Topaz Ledge is kind of the crowning jewel, though. If you can find a good pocket there, that's always like the highest goal achievement. So Spalding would work on that Spessartine Ledge. And then once he kind of felt like he'd had his bills paid and he was feeling confident and a little cocky, maybe he would go down to that Topaz Ledge and try his luck there. And he tried a lot of different tactics. He first tried working the rock just like everyone else did. It was pretty worked out. So he decided to dig down dip of the pegmatite. He dug down about, I want to say 8-10 feet with a backhoe. And he actually would uncover, he said, anywhere from 1 to 4 pound topaz crystals that had rolled loose and settled in the soil. And he got so excited by that, just with the backhoe, just digging them up, that he actually built a little dam in the Hatfield Creek there and tried to hydromine the bottom of the peg. But he said it wasn't that too productive. It was a fun idea, but he would try his luck there and go back to this Spessartine ledge. And unfortunately, a lot of the main specimens up there, he was a really unique character. He wasn't a bragger or anything like that. He'd flaunt too much stuff. A lot of his friends really had to push him to get stuff photographed and put in the right places, like Eugene Ford and Josephine Script. So a lot of this material went off without ever being photographed. But some of it's in Germany, a lot of it's in collections all over the world, museums as well. There's also some other fun minerals that are found up here. You can see the other blue line in the creek there on the far left. That was where hamburgite was found up there, and some amazing hamburgite crystals, some of them about that tall even, and just really unique. And one of my favorites is the dambarite, which is on the far right here in yellow, right on the edge of the property. But dambarite, it's not the rarest gem in the world, but it is some really unique colors, really nice crystals. Some are a little altered, and some are fairly significantly sized. There's one in the Fallbrook Museum about that size. I just had a couple that we found in that area. I just cleared it out and had a couple faceted, and they came out stunning, bright yellow. A lot better than I thought. So that might be an area I'll poke around with some more. There's definitely a lot to chase up here. And that's one thing I did learn in Paula. It's really easy when you're digging to kind of be the dog chasing your tail with like, oh, what about that pegmatite? What about that pegmatite? What about that pegmatite? I'm trying to restrain myself and focus on the productive veins, at least for starting. Most of my work has been on the Spessartine ledge. Recently, I've poked down on this middle red one called the Spalding Dike, which produced a lot of garnet. It's a much smaller dike. It's a little complex. We've had some beryl and some columbite coming out of there and some tourmaline. But yeah, I'm trying to focus mostly on that Spessartine ledge. So here's Spalding. Um, so Spalding Sr. worked the property with his wife until about 1963 is when she passed away. And you can see this one here is them working the property on the Topaz Ledge. So that's really fun photo there. That's kind of what me and my wife do with the property. I'll go up there and dig and move rock, and when I find a pocket, she comes up and gets to dig and having fun with it. But it's good teamwork. We have a lot of fun. But yeah, you can see a great photo. That's Spalding Jr. in the middle, and he's working that Spessartine ledge there now. And he's actually just about to hit the tunnel spot where the tunnels currently exist. This is just before that. So he had some phenomenal pockets actually going into that. This is something really cool. When we purchased the property, we didn't only get the property, but the Spalding family kept records of everything. And Spalding Jr. kept meticulous notes and diary on a lot of his work. And I read them all the time to try to figure out what I should do. This is a hand-drawn map of the Spalding Pocket, which is his crowning achievement on the property. There is, on the Topaz Ledge, there is a giant granite boulder, almost as big as this room long. And he went on the left side of it, which no one had done previously, and dug down. And that's when he found this Spalding Pocket. So there's a ledger up here, but you can see he has a large K. The K is a K feldspar. And he even describes specifically, you can see the loose topaz at the bottom of the pocket. And he describes stuff like the topaz crystals, a lot of the loose ones were actually found underneath the feldspar crystals, tucked up against them. And a lot of the tourmalines were on top, which is really fascinating. You can see this large blob of lepidolite in the middle here. And one thing that's really special about Little 3 lepidolite, it's just the most unique lepidolite in San Diego. I absolutely love it. You get these large transparent crystals that are absolutely rock hard. And even topaz will grow on them and other fun accessory minerals, but they can even come out like Herkimer diamond chains. Some amazing stuff like that came out of here. And yeah, I mean, this is just so cool. And this has been really inspirational for me to like, okay, when I find stuff, look, you got to keep track of it. You got to, document it all. Cause I've had Mike Wise and a few other scientists out, and they love this stuff. Helps them so much of where the minerals are found in the pocket, and also the succession of mineral growth in pocket. And it helps me if I hit a pocket and I start seeing something like a couple case bars and I think it's not much in it, I'll be like, okay, keep chasing that way, or check the bottom down dip and see what's hiding in there. Or sometimes a lot of people hit the very bottom of a pocket and they'll get the loose stuff in the bottom and think that's it. But you really got to push up, because you can get like these feldspars basically made a plug in the pocket and held all of this more intact, which is really cool. But yeah, that pocket was that's his greatest find. Like I said, there's a couple pieces in the Smithsonian from that pocket. And then here we go. Yeah, production just from the Spalding Pocket. because he documented so well. 90 kilograms of tourmaline, 30 kilograms of topaz, 230 kilograms of gem lepidolite. And these pockets, this one was fairly good size, but it is stunning how much material can fit inside of a pocket. You can unpack a pocket for months, and it's amazing. Like you couldn't put it back in the same spot if you tried. It's amazing how these things are packed in there. So, using this data from the Spalding pocket of what he found, they have basically assessed the rest of the peg where the original finds were and guesstimated on the original discovery site and what that did produce. The key word here is estimated, but you get extrapolated, estimated total of about 900 kilograms of tourmaline. It sounds like a ton of tourmaline crystals, but some of the tourmalines can be bigger than my water bottle here. So it's really stunning, some of the size on these things. Another fun accessory mineral is beryl. The beryl can be found on both pegmatites on the property. Morganite specifically, the aqua is a little more rare. Spessartine is a fun one. Not something that was ever on my radar previously working in Paula. There's a little bit out of the tourmaline queen, but kunzite was always my favorite gemstone working in Paula, especially the Ocean View where the kahuna was, because it was just so neon and vivid. But I'll never forget when we found our first pocket of spessartine up there in a dark tunnel. You could see this stuff with no light. It just glows like nobody's business. It's stunning. But yeah, you can see a really nice combo. This is actually an old photo that Spalding took himself. Here's an example of some of these tourmalines. Historically in Paula, and it's something I still fight to this day, if it's not bright pink or hot red, no one cares about tourmaline. Even quartz crystals, feldspars, if it's not a bright pink gemstone, they're like, yeah, who cares? But I think these crystals are just really beautiful and stunning. Most of the tourmaline out of Little 3 is dark green like this. Is a very classic example, except it's a really cool one because it's got a cluster of 3 crystals on matrix. However, there were colored tourmaline. I just put one bicolor in the case in the museum. It was a golden yellow with green. And we also had pink and a couple other colors that added in there too, but mostly between that yellow, pink, and green. So that's the tourmaline. This is just a really beautiful one. Unfortunately, I had to let go of a few months ago. All of our mining goes directly. Everything we dig goes up for sale because that's how we pay for our mining. This is just a really cool topic that I just feel like I had to mention. Spalding was a very secretive guy. He didn't leave the property open to the public very much. However, the one thing he was always open with was scientists and the scientific community for education. He had Stanford come out regularly. He was great friends with Eugene Ford. Sinkankis was very active on the property there. And these are just a handful of papers that were written about Little 3 or involving Little 3. And then a beautiful brooch made by Buzz Gray from some of the material from there. This is the most condensed I could possibly get it. When I went looking for this material, there's so much. And again, that's another thing, we're us maintaining that tradition of opening to the scientific community and trying to be as transparent. I actually took a lot of this historical stuff I had from Spalding and just gave it to GIA, and they scanned it into their library. So that stuff should be available in their library as well. And then our work. So 2022 is when we acquired the property. We had nothing. So until we kind of found a little bit to work to be able to buy some equipment, I was hand working the spots. This was our first pocket, really, on the Spessartine ledge. And it was hilarious because I have all this mining experience and I'm walking in the tunnel and doing all this stuff. And my wife walks in and goes, "What's with this pink stuff on the wall?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's clay." She's like, "Is it structural?" I was like, "No, it's just clay. It's soft." And like, "Well, can I dig it?" I was like, "Sure, go for it." And there's this pink clay in there. And she starts digging through and it leads into the back end of a pocket that someone else had dug from a different angle. But there was a corner that they missed. And so she comes running out of the tunnel, screaming her head off, and she has that spessartine on the left in her hand. I thought there was a snake or something. I'm like, "What happened? Oh no." Because Ramona's kind of notorious for rattlesnakes. And she opens her hand to that. And I was like, okay. So yeah, honestly, most of the major spessartines she's pulled. But yeah, that one was really stunning. This all came from the same pocket zone. This smoky quartz matrix is amazing. There's no scratches or nicks on any of those quartz crystals. It was, and most of the specimens I've been getting out have been in the ceiling, which is funny because in Paula, it's typically the floor plates that come up that we'd get that have the really cool specimens. So most of the Spessartine ledge, at least, I've been pulling plates off the ceiling, and that's where the good matrix are. But yeah, the colors are amazing. And yeah, not a bad little start here. So this was just hand picking in the old tunnel, actually pretty quick off the start. And then this is again my wife. This is actually in the topaz ledge, and this was again kind of picking out some old pockets and seeing what was left, and Spalding didn't chase. But here we have a nice tourmaline, a little bit of Clevelandite on it, a good sized piece. So this piece is green with a little bit of purple on the cap. But like most little three tourmaline, you need a bit of a strong light to really light it through. But it came out amazing. And it was really encouraging for us with the property. I was actually kind of shopping the property around for a while, encouraging other people to buy it, saying I can work it for you, saying I'm confident in the property, can do all of this. And my wife's like, if you're so confident, why don't we buy it? And then when we did, I was like, well, I hope I was right. It's one thing to put someone else's money where your mouth is, but it was really encouraging start for us. We had tourmaline pockets, we had specialty pockets, so that was a fun start. Then we got our backhoe, and you can see some of my scratch marks here. This is about how much work I did before we hit our first major pocket zones, which is not a lot. I mean, 5, 6 scratches there, and I cleaned off this bit of pegmatite here. This was our first little bit of pocket. You can see we have a couple of helmets here full of pocket material. Called this a Gemma pocket. It was nothing but little small smoky quartz crystals with Clevelandite. Beautiful, gemmy, clear stuff, but nothing too fancy. And she actually took a break. She's like, I'm going to go back to the trailer and relax and, get some drinks. And so I started poking around right here. And right when I was poking around there, my screwdriver basically disappeared. And it wasn't a short one, it was about this long, just fell into an open void. I was like, well, I think that might be. I was like, did someone else dig this? Like, did I fall into an old tunnel? What's going on? And so I waited for her to come back up. Yeah, it fell into the Gregory pocket, which was really fun, incredibly significant. Like I said, I mean, anywhere from 1 to 4 feet wide. It kind of hourglass, like most pockets do. And it ended up being almost 7 feet long in duration, which was just crazy. Especially on this vein, most of the pockets aren't that big. It's not a huge pegmatite. I mean, here's your peg from here to here. That's it. It's about 4 feet. So to have such a long pocket in this peg was just really stunning and surprising. I didn't expect it at all. My wife's like, this mining stuff's great. This is easy. We took one poke. And I was like, calm down. But yeah, it took us a couple months to dig that one out. But yeah, this one, unfortunately, there was not a ton of spessartine, which is really odd because the pockets right above it had a lot of spessartine. The ceiling, basically, the pocket went through so much turbulence that almost all the ceiling specimens had damage to them. A lot of the huge smoky quartz crystals, some bigger than like my head, had fallen from the ceiling, had rolled around in the pocket a little. And so this was actually the only one of 2 or 3 nice matrix specimens that we were able to pull out of this pocket. And that's probably my favorite specimen I've ever dug. It's absolutely amazing. All 4 shorels are perfectly terminated. The spessartine's perfectly terminated. And it's just perched right in the middle of everything. Nothing interferes with it. And it's just framed so nicely. But yeah, that was in the ceiling. That thing gave me a heart attack because we found it and I had to leave it there for almost a month and dig around it. And then there was like a little crack on the backside. I could approach it from the side, and I was like, "It's either a really good thing or a really bad thing." I honestly just touched it with a screwdriver, and it had a natural fault and just separated perfectly like that right in my hand. So that was really fun. So here's the first look, and yeah, this was literally the first thing we pulled out. I just poked at the screwdriver, and yeah, not a bad start. It's a really cool penetrator, and you can actually see a really odd iridescence to the quartz crystals in this pocket, which even after cleaning and washing still stayed. But yeah, I was like, well, that's a fun start to a pocket. Wonder what else is here. And the next crystal was actually twice that size. But yeah, it was really fun. There's my wife. I muted the audio just to not distract, but yeah, we're freaking out. And I'm like, I know this is just a start. Like that's a good sized crystal. This is a good sized cavity. It's gonna have more. But yeah, really beautiful crystal, and they clean up amazing. I still have that one in my case at home, just sentimental reasons. But yeah, there's that iridescence in the sun. That's really unique. And then here's a look in the pocket after a little bit of digging. You can see I put that light down in there, but we could literally crawl our bodies through this tube. And basically, you dig the clay out. That loose clay in here is brown. You dig the loose stuff out as much as you can to make room. And a lot of those quartz crystals you can see have already separated off the roof. The roof is on the right here. It's a little discombobulating because I have to twist to fit in there. You can see that a lot of those specimens did come off the roof. A lot of the crystals fell off. As we extracted, though, you could get room to fit in there. Another fun thing about this pocket, though, is I was able to remove the roof entirely. There was a fault running down this pocket, about an inch to 3 inches wide at times. So I was able to work that fault and literally peel the whole roof of the pegmatite off the pocket, and that let us keep chasing it and gave us great access to pulling the stuff out. We had a Gemma Pocket extension right near there, which was really unique that it had some druzy spessartine. So we had a couple feldspars with druzy spessartine on it, quartz crystals with spessartine on and in them, and even one piece had two quartz crystals with spessartine in and around them, with purple blades of lepidolite covered in spessartine, which was really unique because that purple lepidolite hadn't been associated with the spessartine ledge before. So that was my first hint at a chemistry change on the spessartine dike. So really unique. But our April Fool's pocket, which we found last year, was actually right above our Gregory pocket. It was a little tiny dot in the wall, a little spot of dirt that someone had previously exposed. Backhoe needed work, so I couldn't dig. So I was sitting there just like, I'll poke around and see what happens with it. It literally started a couple little quartz crystals the size of my thumbnail. Beautiful, clean little things. And I was poking away, and I just kind of kept going, thought it was over, and it broke into an open cavity behind it. So hence the April Fool's name. It kept doing this. It kept chambering and looking like it was going to stop and changing and opening up. And every time it opened up, chemistry kind of changed in the pocket a bit. So the first section, just quartz. Second section was Clevelandite, big shoral crystals, big spessartine bits, beautiful quartz crystals. One of the best pieces, I have it on Instagram, but everyone's saying it won the Josephine Scripps Award in the San Diego Gem Show or San Diego Fair for best San Diego specimen. But it was really fun. Pain in the butt to get out though. Then after that section, thought it was over. It busted into a whole new section, which had this beautiful blue albite, Clevelandite, which is really classic for the locality. There's a few pieces in the LA Natural History Museum that had this, but I mean, ocean blue, beautiful color, aqua blue, Clevelandite with these gorgeous spessartines on them. Most of the specimens weren't large. They're, could fit in your hand, but beautifully shaped crystals. The color's amazing on them. So this was the largest individual crystal that came out. It was 111 carats, but the color's amazing. Yeah. And then most of the pieces were a little smaller than that. Most of them were on matrix. And there's a couple that came out. There's one in particular that had a pink muscovite, just cluster of it on feldspar, and a couple spessartines mixed in with that blue Clevelandite. You flip it over, and the entire bottom of it was coated in just beautiful spessartine crystals all over that blue Clevelandite. But yeah, this pocket was amazing because all the feldspar was loose. I was poking it with a little chopstick, and it just spessartines just started rolling out and kept rolling out, kept rolling out. I'm just sitting there with a bucket, like, okay, keep it coming. So yeah, this was probably one of the more fun pockets I ever got to dig up here, and it was really rewarding. This piece, like I mentioned, my wife found it. I thought I was done with the pocket. There was a tiny spot of quartz from that first section that went up to the left, and it was nothing but crunchy quartz in the clay, and I didn't want to mess with it. And so I let my wife and our daughter like poke in there, and she got to dig her first little quartz crystals out of it. And then all of a sudden she's like, hey, I feel something. There's something colorful in here. And I look in there, and she pulls out a 25 carat piece of rough with the most amazing color. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of veil in it. So it came down to a 7.4 carat stone, but we had Derek Kosenbach cut that for us, and it came out absolutely stunning. And that one really hurt to let go of. But that was an amazing piece. And you can just see the quality coming out of that pocket. So this is actually, after this, I chased down dip significantly, but my next project moving forward is coming back to this zone and pushing in on this section because the chemistry was amazing here. I want more of that. And then this was the end of the pocket. This is a really cool piece. I actually brought this one out. Again, California, a lot of people are like, what? There's not a giant spessartine or tourmaline on it. There is a nice shoral in there on the quartz. I just think it's such a stunning piece. It came out so beautifully, so pristine. I love the interaction of the Clevelandite with the quartz crystals when you can see the cleave underneath the quartz through it like that. And then the muscovite on here actually has a really unique rusty kind of lavender, like pinkish hue, which does have some lithium content. So it is lepidolite. It's just a different form. Yeah, that's a really beautiful, and again, that iridescence on the quartz crystals, that's so prominent. But yeah, that's a really beautiful piece out of that pocket. And then next, this is a little more recent, so I didn't have time to really write everything down on it and put it in. This is what I'm referring to as the faults pocket zones. So just below the Gregory pocket, I mentioned it was on a fault. I chased that fault underneath the pocket, expecting another pocket there, which I did find. But as I went down, I uncovered more and more and more faults all through that pegmatite. As I chased these pockets and all these faults, the chemistry was wildly different than the pocket I just had 4 feet away from it. There was almost no spessartine. I think I dug one crystal out of probably 6 pockets. This is a gorgeous apatite crystal on matrix here. It's funny in the original audio on the left side here. I'm like, look at this barrel I found. This is cool, a little aqua. And then I took it home and washed it. I'm like, nope, that's not a purple barrel. That's an apatite. Beautiful Clevelandite. There's lepidolite on it. But yeah, I'm finding tourmalines. I thought they were schorls at first. And then I took it home and lit it, and it have a bright blue cap with a pink purple core and a green base. Finding apatites. I ended up finding stilbites. I ended up finding tantalites. Just really bizarre chemistry shift in this fault section. And the last pocket I had on it just a little while ago was a pencil pocket, where all of a sudden it was a pocket full of gem green tourmaline pencils. I think the biggest was probably about that big or so. But I mean, perfect double terminated gem crystals, some with some bicolor to them. And it was just really bizarre. And I'm like, I'm on the spessartine ledge. Like, what are you doing here? Like, where did my spessartine go? And what are all these extra minerals doing here? So it's been really fascinating. Not what I expected or foresaw. I can't say, oh, yeah, I knew what the pegmatite was going to do. Like, I totally foresaw this, but it was really exciting. And I had a lot of excitement about it. People that collected Little 3 stuff in San Diego were really wanted a piece of it because it's something unique and different that they hadn't seen before. And then for me, I love digging different material. That's one thing I loved about Paula, and it's one thing I love about the Little 3 property is the variety of material present on one property is just wild. But yeah, so this was a really fun find for me. I do have some of the pencils with me as well, but one thing I have learned and one thing I do love about pegmatites and digging is you literally never know what's going to be in that pocket when you find it. And just the pursuit of it. I love talking with all the scientists because I will never, ever understand it all. I will never know it. The amount of chemistry and physics that go into forming these things is just beyond what I can comprehend. And it's really fun actually getting to listen to the scientists. I had so many scientists. I had Mike Wise and Matt Taylor, a couple other people out, and it's hilarious to sit there and watch them just argue back and forth about it. I'm like, aren't you guys supposed to be the experts here? And they're just going back and forth at each other with love. But yeah, it was really fun. Even the experts are still debating it. But yeah, it's fun to be able to add to that and bring this historical property back to life and get to add to some of those historical finds with that one beautiful matrix piece and to get to add to some of the history of the mine with finding new material like the stilbites and the tantalites and all these other crystals present here. After finding that green tourmaline pocket on the spessartine ledge, I'm genuinely everything I thought of these being completely separate veins and separate chemistry is kind of out the window. And who knows, maybe I'll find some spessartine and topaz next on that ledge. But like I said, I have pulled up. I'm going to go back into the spessartine section where the April pocket was. And I do have plans for the topaz ledge after I find a little bit more orange, get a little more cocky, and get to go try my hand at the blue again. That being said, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
To know how that microblaster worked on your ledge.
The microblaster, I was not a fan of. The pegmatites are really hard with rock splitting. Things like deck span and blasting in general, if the peg is hard and there are no pockets in the immediate vicinity, it cracks beautifully. But if you're around a pocket zone, it absorbs that shock and that push and can actually push it into the pocket and damage the pocket more, or just kind of cause nothing. Which is kind of a good thing because it either breaks and yay, I accomplished what I wanted to, but there's no pocket, or it doesn't break and you're like, hey, there's a soft spot, there's something I want there. So I personally, it was just so stubborn. I like the simplicity of feather and wedges is what I've been doing. It's how I got most of the April Fool's pocket out. When you do get a pocket, like I said, the peg's only 4 feet thick here on the spessartine ledge. So if the pocket's in the middle, you only got 1 or 2 feet of peg on top of it. A nice feather and wedge split. I have found, you dig out what you can, you clean it out for about a foot in, then you get to split that off, remove it, and it allows you to kind of keep walking the pocket in. And that's one thing in Paula, obviously, it's so deep underground, we had to use explosives. But that's one thing I still fought for there is like, when you're in a pocket, like, we'll blast around it. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, let's put a little bit of effort in here and preserve this stuff. So that's one thing I take a lot of pride in this property is to get to do it my way. And the gems aren't running anywhere. They've taken millions of years to get to this point. So I'm going to do all the work I can to keep them in as natural a state as I can without damaging them. Yeah, I've been using feather and wedge at this point. I will eventually have to escalate, into explosives probably, but in California especially, it is as obnoxious as it possibly could be to use explosives. It's really insane. It's funny. I have receipts from Spalding of literally going to the drugstore down the street to pick up his dynamite and fuse, and like it was so easy back in the day. But it is just, and working in Paul, I have experience with that. What it takes to have a license and everything, and to house it on site is never going to happen there. So I would have to hire that out. So if I did do explosives, I would just pre-drill everything and have the guys come out, professionals, pay them, and they'd come load everything and shoot it all in one day.
Do it for free.
I'll remember that.
See my video.
Okay.
I'm following you.
Okay. I won't say no. But yeah, so yeah, feather and wedge is where I'm at, and I will gradually escalate as the peg requires.